Ladies and gentlemen, when the average American consumer shops for a new car, whether they're leasing or financing, they really have no way of knowing whether they're getting a good deal. And that's exactly why we created the DriveMatch Calculator. With the DriveMatch Calculator, you're never going to miss out on a rebate or incentive again. It also pulls all current offers. It's going to pull all the base APRs if you're intending to finance. It's going to pull the residual values and money factors if you intend to lease. And it's pulling all of this data directly from the captive bank, whether that's Ford, Honda, Toyota, GM, BMW, Mercedes, etc. And it's exactly the same exact data that the dealerships use. Now today, I'm going to show you how the DriveMatch Calculator works using a 2026 Honda CR-V hybrid as an example. It's one of the best-selling cars in the country, but you can use the DriveMatch Calculator for every new car for sale in the country. It doesn't have to be a Honda CR-V. Now we've priced the DriveMatch Calculator at $20 a month, and you get unlimited VIN lookups, so you can cross-shop as many vehicles as you'd like. And it's absolutely perfect for comparison shopping and structuring lease or finance deals before you actually go to the dealership. Honestly, I wish I had this tool when I was a lease hobbyist and I was trying to score some awesome lease deals. Another cool feature of this calculator is that it shows you the lease price and the finance price side by side, so you can decide which is optimal for yourself. Now, I'll show you how I go through this process, and I'll show you whether or not leasing or financing this Honda CR-V makes more sense for my financial situation and my long-term goals, and then you can decide what makes sense for you depending on which vehicle you're running in the DriveMatch Calculator. And if you'd like to use the DriveMatch Calculator, you can click on the link in the description, or you can go to DriveMatch.com and check it out for yourself. But with that, let's go ahead and jump into the computer and talk about whether you should lease or finance this 2026 Honda CR-V hybrid. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we are on the Honda of Seattle website. I'm not affiliated with Honda of Seattle in any way, but they do have a 2026 Honda CR-V hybrid Sport Touring, which I like. I love this color. I like this spec. If I were shopping for a Honda CR-V hybrid, this is kind of what I would go for, right? So all I'm going to do here is just copy the VIN number, and then I'm going to note down the MSRP, which is $44,155, as you can see up here in the upper right-hand corner. I'm going to reset the DriveMatch Calculator, and this is what it looks like when you go to DriveMatch.com/calculator. You're going to have an option to lease, finance, and cash. So first I'm going to structure the lease and then structure the finance deal, and then we can compare what we want to go with, right? So you can either manually search for this car, or you can just enter the VIN number. I like to just enter the VIN. I find it much easier to do, and you'll see that it automatically pulls in the car. Now in terms of the MSRP, I'm going to put in $44,155. In the discount field, I'm going to leave that blank for now, and we'll come back to it. And you'll see how we can optimize that later in this video. For now, what the DriveMatch Calculator wants to do is pull the lease programs, and it's going to pull these lease programs directly from Honda Financial Services. So let's go ahead and enter our zip code, because regionally these lease programs can be different. So it's going to pull the lease programs based on my zip code. Now you're going to see that it pulled the standard lease rates and the special lease rates. So if you want to see what they are, you can click on this purple box, and you'll see that, for instance, if I wanted to do a 36-month lease on this CR-V, the money factor is going to be 0.0028, which is equivalent to a 6.72% APR. And if I want to do a special lease rate at 36 months, you're looking at 0.00197, which is equivalent to a 4.73% APR. So I'm going to go with special lease rates. We've checked that, and then we'll check the residual values based on these rates. And you can see residual values for just about every term here, right? So for instance, if you wanted to do a 36-month term at 10,000 miles, you're looking at a 66% residual value, a 65% residual value at 12,000 miles, or at 15,000 miles, a 63% residual value. And the residual value is just what the vehicle, or what Honda estimates the vehicle is going to be worth at the end of the lease term. So I did 36 months. I'm going to do 12,000 miles a year, and you'll see that we get a 65% residual value, and that's what you can buy the car for at the end of the lease term, right? So if right here, I've already done the calculation. If you take the MSRP, which is $44,155, you multiply that by 0.65 because it's 65%. The residual value is $28,700.75. So that's what you can buy this Honda CR-V hybrid for at the end of the lease term, excuse me. And this lease residual value is non-negotiable. It's kind of set in stone. And you'll see that if we do a higher mileage lease, the residual value is going to drop. So it's at 65. If I click on 15,000 miles, the residual drops to 63%. So obviously it's going to be worth less at the end of the lease because you drove 9,000 more miles had you done compared to doing a 12,000 mile year lease. So let's revert this back to 12,000 miles. The calculator is also going to pull the base money factor on this lease, and this is essentially the interest rate. And this is fantastic, right? Because what a lot of dealers do is they mark up this money factor. And I'm not saying they shouldn't mark up the money factor, but you can determine what's fair based on the deal that you're getting. But at least you know if a dealer is marking up the money factor, because sometimes they can mark it up. You know, right now it's 0.00197, which is 4.73% APR, but they might mark it up a percentage point or 2 percentage points. And hey, you can say, hey, I have the DriveMatch calculator. I know that it's 4.73%. Why are you charging me 5.73 or 6.73 or 6.5, right? And over the lease term, that can save you, just knowing this information can save you, thousands of dollars. And that's why we built this thing, to give you full transparency. Anyways, we'll leave this alone. We're not going to mark up the money factor because you know what? We're not going to let the dealer mark up the money factor. So we'll go ahead and scroll down. And now the next thing the DriveMatch calculator does is it's going to pull all the incentives and rebates that you could potentially qualify for, right? So you have all of these rebates. You have a conquest offer, a loyalty offer, you have a captive lease and finance offer of $750, and then you have your college grad bonus and a military appreciation offer, right? Okay, I know that I qualify for this conquest offer because you can read the eligibility by clicking on the purple box, and I meet these requirements. So I'm just going to click this box, and then you'll see that you can't stack it with the loyalty offer. And loyalty essentially means that you currently own a Honda. And then I also know that I qualify for this captive lease and finance offer. So I'm getting $1,750 in rebates between these two rebates. So let me go ahead and click these in again. And then we don't have any additional incentives to add, so we'll leave these fields blank. And then this calculator also pulls the acquisition fee directly from Honda Financial Services, which is $595. This is a non-negotiable amount. You need this to start just about any lease in the country. Every leasing company, whether you're doing a Mercedes, a BMW, a Toyota, a Nissan, they all have acquisition fees. They typically range between $300 to $1,000. Honda's at $595. Now, this is where things can get a bit variable, but the dealer fee can, it really can depend. Some dealer fee is like $250, some is $1,000. I'm going to go with $500, so I think that's a pretty conservative estimate for a Honda dealership. And then we have to put in title, license, and registration fees. I'm going to go with $500. Typically, it's about 1 percentage point of the MSRP here in Washington, so $500 is definitely a conservative estimate and definitely on the higher end. Okay, now you'll see that it's also pulled the taxes, 10.25%, which you'll have to pay on the monthly payment. And then if we scroll down, you'll see that you can customize the due at signing amount. Right now, it's structured for a sign and drive. And if you look over here on the upper right-hand side, you'll see that the total due at signing amount for this lease is $0 because it's a sign and drive. And then starting the month 2, your monthly payment starts. And with taxes, you're looking at $651 a month. Now, I like to do this at first month. So you're just putting first month's payment down, and then you continue making that payment every single month. So $637 due at signing with an ongoing $637 monthly payment. You can also do this custom. So if you want to put like $3,000 down, and this $3,000 is inclusive of first month's payment, acquisition fee, registration fees, any taxes and rebates. This is going to be your total out-of-pocket $3,000, and you'll see how the monthly payment changes and it drops to $565. But let's go ahead and revert this back to first month. And now what I like to do is kind of scroll back up to the top of the calculator because we're going to optimize this and try to get this price even lower. Remember how we left the discount field blank? Well, let's go ahead and put in a discount now. All right, so this dealer is saying that, hey, we're going to give you a $1,378 discount right off the bat. So let's go ahead and plug that in. I'll change this from percent to $, and we'll do $1,378. And if we go back to percentage, that's equivalent to a 3.12% discount. I think that's pretty good, but let's see if we can do 5%. Let's change this to 5%, and that changes the selling price to $41,947. And as you can see, the monthly payment has dropped to $565 with $565 due at signing, and before it was $637. So right, 5% discount makes a big difference. We're down to $565. Now what we want to do is kind of mess with the terms. So I know that there's a 24-month term as well. So let's see what happens to the monthly payment on a 24-month term. $654. 27 months, I know that there's not a 27-month term. And the reason I know that is because when I did the lease rates, We only have a 20, oh, actually there is a 27-month term, excuse me. So let's go ahead and click on 27 months. It goes to 616, so that's a little bit better. 30 months is 601. 33 months, it goes to 588, and I'm reading up here on the right-hand side. 565 at 36, and you'll see that no money factor found for a 39-month term. So I think 36 is our best at 565, right? Yep. Yeah, 565, 36 months with a 5% discount. All right, so now what we can do is we can go ahead and run the finance numbers on this vehicle as well. You'll see that the VIN has carried over, the vehicle is carried over, the MSRP and the discount has carried over. And then now what we need to do is pull the finance and cash programs, right? Because the finance incentives and rebates are going to be different than your lease incentives and rebates. And all you do is just click on Get Finance Programs, and it's pulled the standard finance rates and the special finance rates directly from Honda Financial Services. So for instance, if you wanted to do a 72-month term, the standard rate is 6.24%. And the special finance rate at 72 months is going to be 4.99%. I'm going to go with the special finance rate. I'm going to select 72 months. It's automatically brought in the 4.99%. And again, this is the base APR. So even if you're financing, you know if the dealer's marking up your money factor. And again, this alone could save you thousands of dollars, right? If you know a dealer is marking up your money factor, and you also have all of your finance and cash incentives and rebates here, and you'll never miss out on a rebate, right, with the DriveMatch Calculator. So it's awesome. Now we'll do the same $1,000 conquest, and we'll also do the captive lease. So again, $1,750 of rebates between these two. And oftentimes the incentives and rebates can be different for leasing and financing. Now, in this particular case, they're exactly the same, but oftentimes we see that dealers may have, or the manufacturers may have more incentives for leasing or maybe more incentives for financing. But in this case, it's exactly the same. You'll see the fees carried over as well. Pardon me for zooming in like that. And then in terms of the down payment, what I like to do is just match it up to the lease. So the lease down payment is $565, and I'm going to do that on the finance too. And that way, just making an apples to apples comparison, even though you probably will have to put more than $565 down if you finance this car. But you'll see that the savings are substantial here, right? So you're looking at a $565 monthly payment if you lease this car versus a $721 monthly payment if you finance this car. And that's a savings of, let's just take $721 and subtract $565 from that amount. $156 a month you're saving by leasing this car, and if you multiply this by 36, that's a savings of $5,616, right, over the course of 36 months. Now, the other thing I like to do is run my 1.25% rule of leasing on this monthly payment, and this is a metric that I do, and you get a score at the end of the calculation. And all you do is take the effective monthly payment of a lease, which is $565, and divide it by the MSRP of the vehicle, which is $44,155. And when I do that, I get 1.28%, right? And so anytime you get over 1.5% when you run this calculation, that typically is a vehicle that you should finance instead of lease, because the savings for leasing that particular car are negated. A lot of cars are over 1.5%. Cars that lease well are under 1.5%. And as you can see here, under 1.5% is what I consider a good deal. Under 1.25% is what I consider a great deal. And under 1% is what I consider like an amazing deal. And this is sitting at 1.28%, which is on the cusp of a great deal at 1.25. So at 1.28, this is a great lease deal in terms of value, because a lot of cars, the lease payment will be higher than the finance payment, and that kind of negates the benefit of leasing. On top of that, when you lease this Honda, you're going to have gap insurance included, right? You're not going to worry about diminished value protection, because let's just say you get in a fender bender and you get the car, properly fixed. If you finance that car, you're on the hook for that depreciation. Whereas if you lease it and get it properly fixed, you can just turn that car back in at the end of the lease. Like, how many times have we got an accident in a car we financed, and even though it's a minor accident, you just never feel like it drives the same. With leasing, it's not your problem. You can just turn it in at the end of the lease. And ladies and gentlemen, remember, if you want to keep this car long term, with leasing, you can buy it at the end of the lease. Remember, we have a 65% residual value. So let me just run those calculations again. So 44,155 times 0.65. You can buy this vehicle at the end of the lease term for $28,700. And look, you're also protected from depreciation. Like if this vehicle is worth less than $28,700, you can just turn it in. If it's worth more at the end of the lease term, you can choose to buy it and keep it, or you can trade it in and use that positive equity of $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 towards your next car. So in a nutshell, if I were shopping for this Honda CR-V, I would definitely lease this vehicle based on the reasons that I just explained, right? You're gonna get depreciation protection. You have a much lower monthly payment. You're gonna save about $5,000 over the course of 36 months. And then if you really wanna buy this car, you can buy this car at the end of the lease term for $28,700. And ladies and gentlemen, with that, I'm going to call it a video. If you have any questions about car leasing or car financing or about the DriveMatch Calculator, let me know in the comment section below. I'd be happy to help. This tool is truly a game changer. It really provides consumers with the amount of transparency that they deserve, and it really lets you structure your lease or finance deal exactly like a car dealership would. And this is something that, you know, consumers haven't had access to in the past. Like I said, if I had access to this tool growing up or through my 20s, I would have saved a lot of money, or at least had a lot of peace of mind. And again, if you want to start using this tool, you can click on the link in the description below, depending on which platform you're watching this video, or you can go to DriveMatch.com. Financial knowledge is power. Please like and follow for more.